Don't get me wrong, Williams racing wasn't always the absolute disaster it is today. Once upon a time, they were the powerhouse of Formula One, with 9 Constructors' Championships, and legends like Mansell and Prost behind the wheel. And at the heart of this downfall stands Clare Williams, criticized for steering the team through its most turbulent years. Was Clare's leadership the anchor that pulled it under? Today, we'll find out.
We weren't really paying our drivers, and that doesn't feel good. You know, you can pay them small amounts because that's the right thing to do to give them some money, but it was really difficult.
The Williams Formula One team has its roots deeply intertwined with Sir Frank Williams, a man whose passion for motorsport was matched only by his relentless drive to succeed. He started out as a private guy, entering cars in Formula 3 and Formula 2 during the 60s. By 1969, he was on the grid with his own team, fielding a Brabham chassis driven by Piers Courage. Despite the enthusiasm, the early years were tough. Operating on shoestring budgets, Frank often had to make ends meet by selling parts or even running his team out of a phone booth. This wasn't metaphorical. He literally used public phone booths to make business calls because he couldn't afford an office. By the mid-70s, Williams Grand Prix engineering was born. Frank partnered with Patrick Head, a talented engineer who would prove instrumental in transforming the team into a powerhouse. Without Head's technical brilliance, Williams might have remained just another backmarket team struggling to survive. The breakthrough came in 1979 with the FW7, a car that harnessed the emerging concept of ground effect aerodynamics, using side skirts and a Venturi tunnel to generate massive downforce. It allowed Williams to compete with giants like Ferrari, McLaren, and Lotus. It was like they'd found some cheat code for Formula One. Clay Regazzoni secured Williams' first victory at the British Grand Prix that year, and the team went from being something nobody cared about to unrunners in the space of a season.
A new Grand Prix year starts at the Buenos Aires Autodrome in typically fierce heat. After 2 days of practice, the shape of 1980 is clearer.
The 1980 season was a game changer. With Australian driver Alan Jones behind the wheel, Williams dominated. Jones clinched the Drivers' Championship while Williams took home its first Constructors' title. By 1982, Williams' upward trajectory showed no signs of stopping. The introduction of turbocharged engines in the early 80s changed the game, and Williams was quick to adapt. Partnering with Honda for power units in 1984, they began to close the gap to their rivals. This partnership would later produce some of the most dominant cars the sport had ever seen. The late 80s saw Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet driving for the team, helping secure multiple championships. The FW11 in particular was a marvel of its time. With active suspension and the raw power of Honda engines, it delivered back-to-back Constructors' Championships in 1986 and 1987. Piquet also won the driver's title in '87, further cementing Williams' reputation as the team to beat. Yes, Mansell and Piquet hated each other's guts, but they pushed each other to perform at their absolute best, which was exactly what the team needed.
Frank Williams, there's something about North America seems to suit Keke. Your last win, Dallas, and now you've done it in Detroit.
Yeah, it's a good place, it's the best place in the world to win races, no doubt about it.
Williams' dominance extended into the 90s with the arrival of Renault as their engine supplier. This partnership proved to be one of the most successful in the sport's history. Between 1992 and 1997, Williams won 5 Constructors' Championships and 4 drivers' titles. The FW14B, designed by Adrian Newey and Patrick Head, was the pinnacle of Formula One engineering. With active suspension, traction control, and a semi-automatic gearbox, the car was virtually untouchable. In 1992, Nigel Mansell won 9 of the 16 races, setting a new record for the most victories in a single season at the time. The following years saw more success with Prost and Hill securing drivers' titles in 93 and 96. Villeneuve added another 97, marking Williams' last championship to date. At their peak, Williams was a model of efficiency and excellence. They scored 114 race wins, 313 podiums, 128 pole positions, and 133 fastest laps. Their total of 9 Constructors' Championships still ranks second, only to Ferrari. However, this golden era was not without its challenges. The tragic death of Ayrton Senna in 1994 while driving for Williams cast a long shadow over the team. With the departure of Adrian Newey in 1997, the team lost a key architect of their success, and it would prove to be a turning point of their team.
We go back a long way along history. We've been in this sort of predicament before, but always punch our way out of it, and that's what we're doing now.
In the early 2010s, Williams Racing found itself at a crossroads. The team that had once been a dominant force in Formula One was struggling to keep up with the rapid advancements in the sport. It was in this environment of uncertainty that Clare Williams, the daughter of team founder Sir Frank Williams, stepped into a leadership role. Clare officially became the deputy team principal in 2013, but she didn't just waltz into the top job because of her surname. She actually spent over a decade learning the ropes, handling media relations, sponsor negotiations, and all that behind-the-scenes stuff that keeps a Formula One team running. Her appointment came at a pivotal moment. The team had endured a dismal 2011 season, finishing 9th in the Constructors' Championship with just 5 points. That's worse than Force India, and nobody ever cared about that team whatsoever. I mean, the only teams behind scored 0 points. None. A slight resurgence in 2012, highlighted by Pastor Maldonado's surprising win at the Spanish Grand Prix, offered a glimmer of hope. But only a glimmer. I mean, look, nobody expected Pastor Crastonado to keep it out of the wall for a whole race, let alone win one. Reddit is still debating was it luck or skill, and I tend to think it was the latter one. But this made no difference for Williams at the end of the day. The underlying team issues remained unresolved, and Clare had to get to work and do it quick.
So today is the first look of the Williams Martini FW36, and I think everyone will agree it's a fantastic looking race car.
Clare Williams' first major task was to stabilize the team's finances. By this point, Williams' loss of tobacco sponsorships in the early 2000s had hit the team hard. Those cigarette companies were pumping serious money into Formula One, and when they were forced to pull out, teams like Williams lost millions overnight. Deals with Martini, Unilever, and Petrobras provided much-needed funding and helped the team stay afloat during this challenging period. The iconic Martini livery was brilliant for Williams. The car looked like $1 million. I still don't understand how you can advertise alcohol while driving a car, but the deal brought in much-needed cash, and that's all that mattered. If you're ready to give Williams money, they will always take it. However, the dawn of Formula One's turbo hybrid era in 2014 introduced new engine regulations that required significant investment and technical expertise. Williams made a strategic decision to partner with Mercedes for power units, as the Mercedes engine was the class of the field, offering unparalleled power and reliability. It was so far ahead of the competition that teams would have sold their souls to get their hands on it. Coupled with the FW36 chassis, Williams was actually competitive. In 2014 and 2015, the team achieved back-to-back third-place finishes in the Constructors' Championship. Drivers Valtteri Bottas and Felipe Massa played key roles in this success, delivering consistent performances and securing multiple podium finishes. I think Bottas was very impressive, a cool, calm Finn who could extract every ounce of performance from the car without making silly mistakes. I absolutely love that dude. Should probably make a video about him as well. And by the way, I'm trying to hit 15,000 subscribers by Formula One summer break, so if you like the video so far, don't forget to subscribe.
I am delighted to be announcing that the Williams Martini Racing driver lineup for the 2018 season will be Lance Stroll and Sergei Sorokin.
The Williams resurgence was really kind of short-lived. By 2016, other teams, including Ferrari and Red Bull, had closed the gap to Mercedes' engine advantage. The Mercedes power unit was still mighty, but it wasn't the silver bullet it had been in previous seasons. Williams lacked the resources to keep up with their well-funded rivals, and their performance began to decline. The team dropped to 5th in the constructors' standings in 2016. Obviously, at that point, media began to question Clare Williams' leadership. Some papers argued that the team had become too reliant on its historical legacy and had failed to modernize its approach. The departure of key technical staff, including Pat Symonds, further hampered the team's ability to develop competitive cars. Symonds wasn't just any technical director, he was a proper big brain with decades of experience, and losing him left a massive void in the team's technical leadership. Additionally, the reliance on pay drivers like Lance Stroll and Sergei Sorokin drew criticism, as it seemed to prioritize financial stability over performance. But you can't race when you don't have the money, so Clare had to take funds from everyone offering. And nobody was really eager to sponsor a failing team, so she had to fight the fires of today rather than thinking about tomorrow. It's basically the same downfall Haas faced with Gunter. This makes the survival tactic a very bad one, because you can't do it forever, and at some point have to face the music.
Because one of the assets as well that you have to sell in Formula One when things aren't going so well is a race seat. And unfortunately, that's what I ended up having to do. I had to sell race seats.
By 2018, Williams had hit rock bottom. The FW41, the first car overseen by new technical officer Paddy Lowe, was a disaster. It was plagued by severe aerodynamic issues and poor handling. The drivers couldn't even keep it on the track half the time, and when they did, they were miles off the pace. The team finished last in the Constructors' Championship, scoring just 7 points. That's not a gradual decline, that's falling off a bloody cliff. In 2017, Williams were on the podium, scored 83 points, finished 5th in the championship. The next year, slowest car, 7 points, back of the grid. The 2018 car had been a mismatch of Mercedes and Ferrari concepts, and Williams fundamentally misunderstood what the simulator was telling them. That essentially cost them millions and led to another year of embarrassment. Despite efforts to regroup, including bringing in George Russell and Robert Kubica as drivers in 2019, the results failed to improve. Russell was a proper talent, a Mercedes junior with a ton of potential, but even he couldn't make that car look decent. Kubica's return to Formula One after his horrific rally accident was a great story, but he was clearly struggling in a car that was virtually undrivable. The team remained at the back of the grid, with only a single point scored that season, courtesy of Kubica, in a chaotic German Grand Prix.
That mindset, because I was always the boss's daughter, I always felt I had to work, or try at least, and work harder than everybody else to prove that I deserved to be there.
The 2019 season was a complete embarrassment for Williams. Not only was the car uncompetitive, but they weren't even ready for preseason testing. It's sort of the one job you have to do as an F1 team, to build the car to race. But even when they did manage to get around to building it, they might as well not have bothered, because the man who designed the car was so embarrassed by how bad it was, he took a leave of absence. That man was the same Paddy Lowe, who had been poached from Mercedes with high expectations. The car only managed 1 point over the entire season. The FW42 was often lapped multiple times during races. The drivers were basically just mobile chicanes for the frontrunners. Despite 2019 really seeming like rock bottom for Williams, it actually somehow managed to go downhill from there for Clare. The 2020 season proved to be even harder, as the real problems were off track. They had no money. As the team's on-track performance declined, their financial struggles worsened. Prize money, sponsorship revenue, and other income streams diminished as the team consistently finished at the bottom of the Constructors' Championship standings. As much as I've made fun of her, I do feel bad for Clare. She obviously worked very hard to keep the team going, and she did have a good run of form during that 2013 to 2017 period. I would argue that her management style was too traditional, focusing on preserving the family legacy rather than embracing the radical changes needed to modernize the team. Clare herself acknowledged the difficulty of leading the team, often stating that the financial pressures and high stakes of the sport made it an almost impossible task. Despite doing everything she could to try and keep Williams afloat during the 2020 season, Clare sadly had to sell the family-owned business. In August 2020, Williams announced it had been sold to Dorilton Capital for $180 million, a reflection of the team's storied history and brand value, despite its on-track struggles. For Clare, this decision was deeply personal. She confirmed that she and her family would leave the sport following the 2020 Italian Grand Prix. However, this was the only real option for the team to keep going. The sale provided much-needed capital injection. Dorilton Capital promised to modernize operations, improve facilities, and rebuild the team's competitive edge. The firm also retained the Williams name, ensuring the legacy of one of Formula One's most iconic teams would live on.
When you say you missed out by a year, do you mean with the sale of Williams?
Yes. So we had to sell in 2020. We just ran out of money. If we'd have just made it through that 2020, we would as a family still be racing. I'm absolutely convinced by that.
In 2021, Williams continued their poor form, but did manage to score their first point since the 2019 German Grand Prix. In Belgium, Russell qualified in second place and scored Williams' first podium. Their last podium was 4 years ago at that point. Yes, the race was stopped after only 2 laps under a safety car, and it was more like a procession in the rain. But a podium is a podium, and Williams would take what they could get at this point. The team also achieved a second consecutive double points finish, as Latifi finished 9th. Russell also scored back-to-back points at the 2021 Italian Grand Prix and at the 2021 Russian Grand Prix. Williams finished in 8th place in the Constructors' Championship with 23 points, 10 points ahead of Alfa Romeo, which finished in 9th place. It wasn't a return to their glory days, but it was a sign that they weren't completely hopeless. For the 2022 season, Russell left Williams to join the Mercedes team. It was a blow to lose a driver of his caliber, but everyone knew it was coming. Even though I don't really like Russell, he was too talented to stay at the back of the grid forever. Ex-Red Bull driver Alex Albon was signed to replace him. Albon had shown some results at Red Bull before being unceremoniously dropped to make way for Sergio Perez. Williams' signing was a chance for him to rebuild his reputation. His teammate was the GOAT himself. Latifi still retained his spot in the team because he was basically paying for everything, including Albon's salary. I mean, Duracell promotion was paying a little too, but we're not talking tobacco dollars. Little by little, Williams started to turn around. Albon scored the team's first points of the season in the Australian Grand Prix. He pitted only once on the last lap and finished 10th. He nursed those hard tires for practically the entire race. And all of these results were actually good enough for people to start noticing the team again. However, 2023 season would bring probably the most unexpected turn yet.
We're on the back foot really from testing. We're just a little bit late on delivering everything, which just means it walks into the race weekend. Alex described it well when he said we probably arrived jogging, not running.
Preceding the start of the 2023 race year, Mercedes ex-chief strategist James Vowles was announced to take over as the team's new principal. This was a significant appointment. Vowles had been a key figure in Mercedes' dominance throughout the 2010s, and his arrival signaled Williams' intent to rebuild properly. For the 2023 season, Williams announced a long-term partnership with Gulf Oil, bringing the iconic blue and orange colors back to Formula One. Albon's contract had been extended, partnering rookie Logan Sargeant, the first American driver to race in Formula One since Alexander Rossi in 2015. The season opener of the Bahrain Grand Prix saw Albon score 1 point in 10th ahead of Sargeant, who finished 12th. This was a good result, but that's about as much of Sargeant driving as we would see all year. I am not even joking when I say that he seemed to be allergic to tarmac. Here is a diagram for you. This is track, this is not track, this is wall, and this is where Logan Sargeant chose to drive. 16 crashes across 3 different drivers. Even when they decided to replace Sargeant with Colapinto, the spirit of Logan must have taken Colapinto's wheel at some point.
There's a Williams with enormous damage. Franco Colapinto trying to find his way into the top 10, finds the barrier instead.
Thankfully, at least Franco scored some points and was actually up to pace and showed some promise. The estimated repair costs Williams encountered that year were upwards of 10 million. This is not good in an era where you have a budget cap in Formula One and you can't just throw money at problems all the time. I bet you Doralton Capital were probably really scared there. Highly doubt they expected to be rebuilding cars every other weekend when they bought the team.
Sadly, Logan Sargeant having to exit with a leap rather than leaping up the grid order.
Trackers, let's see there as he turns. Yeah, look. Almost want to see that in slow motion here.
In February 2025, Williams announced a record multi-year title sponsorship with Atlassian and entered the 2025 season as Atlassian Williams Racing. Carlos Sainz has also signed a multi-year deal. As the announcement became official on the first day of the summer break, after months of rampant speculation, I kept asking myself, how did the hottest free agent of the 2024 F1 season end up in a backmarker? Well, Sainz craved stability. Alpine offered uncertainty. With talks ongoing regarding a potential transformation of Alpine, rumors were floating around the paddock that Sainz could be swayed if Alpine struck a deal with Mercedes for the supply of engines from 2026. Sainz didn't really have time to wait for Audi. As other drivers looking for seats started getting anxious about his indecision, Sainz went for the most satisfactory out of 3. Williams right now do actually look like they're on a good track. I mean, Vowles did even say when he arrived at Williams, some of that infrastructure was literally looking like it was from the 90s. The thing is, I think they're aiming for 2026 to really be a little bit higher up in the constructor standings again. Vowles is clearly ecstatic about attracting a multi-time race winner, demonstrating the renewed appeal of Williams to existing and potential sponsors. So, was Clare Williams really to blame for destroying Williams F1? It's a bit more complicated than that. The team's decline was the result of decades of financial strain, strategic missteps, and an increasingly competitive Formula One landscape. She reminds me of people who refuse to sell their houses while skyscrapers are being constructed around, you know? She's trying to run a team like her father did, as a group of people who gather on weekend to race. But that time is long gone, and right now, Formula One is the most technologically advanced and competitive sport in the world. It's really sad that it took her too much time to realize this. Otherwise, she could have done something to turn this thing around without the outright sale. It was not intentional, but she really was destroying the team with the way she ran things. I mean, you're going against multinational corporations, one team principal is just a lawyer. There is no way to be competitive without having some kind of edge. For me, the question remains, will Sainz get another podium this year, or we'll have to wait for 2026? Because I really don't want the guy to be stuck at the back forever. Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.